Hello, it is a Tuesday, which means it's time to record another in real life video. It's getting a little cold out, so of course putting on some fittingly cold weather attire. But nonetheless, those with a keen eye may notice that this in real life video, I like to have a little number there for the overall count in the bottom right corner at the start. You'll notice that we skipped over one. That's because this one I've actually recorded ahead. This one and the next one that you'll see, I've recorded ahead because I'll be busy in real life as well. It's going to be holiday times, busy as usual, as well as some other stuff on top of it. But that is neither here nor there. Suffice to say, this was a topic that seemed a little bit prescient that I wanted to kind of get out and talk about. Well, it's still a little bit more, still in the zeitgeist, still in the discourse, as it were. That being the Game Awards nominations, the big Game Awards show every year, Geoff Keighley's Game Awards. They have come out with the nominations about a week ago now. And as per usual, people are up in arms, right? As per usual. Probably that's right. The typical content mill has returned. Once again, you can put out a commentary video about the Game Awards and how just you don't like it, right? And maybe give your own takes about what's good and what's not. And of course, complain about how it's always just ads every single year. But damn if we don't like watching those ads and streaming them and all of that, right? It's hypocrisy and irony all the way down of the highest magnitude, right? But hey, here I am with my own. Nonetheless, to reiterate, this year's sort of big talk about it, the big discourse, is around the nominees themselves for Game of the Year and a few of the other categories, right? A lot of folks are angry. Man, gamers are angry, as with the capital G. Gamers be angry about the nominees of this particular Game of the Year award show. That being the inclusion of stuff like remakes, remasters, and DLC or expansions, right? A lot of folks are saying these shouldn't be allowed. These shouldn't be something that are in the running when there are plenty of other fully fledged games that are not expansions or DLC or remakes or remasters of older games, right? This year of note, I think in the main Game of the Year category, in the running there, we have, I believe, the second issuance of the Final Fantasy VII remake. I think it's Rebirth. And as well, the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion DLC for Elden Ring, right, in the running for the Game Awards as main nominees. And I'm here to say, to throw my own voice into the wind, whether it be heard by many or few, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, really. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, I guess is the way I would put it. It doesn't matter whether or not, you should be able to nominate whatever the hell you want. Obviously, some context for the Game Awards themselves. When it comes to these nominees, they purportedly, they source a lot of their information, a lot of their rulings, not just when it comes to the nominees, but who they pick for the winner. They have a big page filled with people that they talk to, right? Various publications, big and small, from individuals to, in some of the biggest names in video games, like IGN, for instance, right? They all contribute in some way or another to what is ultimately decided to be this one is the Game of the Year this year. And the same is true whenever it's up for the nominees and whatnot, I believe. But I think it's an issue where, well, it's a non-issue, right? The case should be, if you think that, for instance, right, I haven't even played it myself. I haven't even played Shadow of the Erdtree. But I have played Elden Ring, of course, on the channel. If you think Shadow of the Erdtree is good enough to be worthy of a nomination for the Game of the Year, why not nominate it, Certainly, if you were an individual making your own list, right? And mind you, there's no reason you can't be, like, no one's going to stop you from, like, putting up a blog post or some sort of ridiculous forum post or making a YouTube video of what your favorite video games were in the year 2024. You can do that. You can totally do that and say, oh, actually, I really like Shadow of the Erd Tree, so I'm gonna break the rules a little bit, right? It's a Game of the Year list. They're make whatever rule you want. But in this case, there is some sort of group consensus at play. And that group consensus will sort of like solve the issue in and of itself. You know, if there are so many games this year that are either disappointments or like unworthy of the great golden title of the game of Geoff Keighley's Game of the Year, then so be it. So if that's the case, then none of them are as cool as the DLC Shadow of the Erd Tree or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so be it. It should take the cake, right? If that's really what's on everyone's mind, if that's the general consensus, then it should take it. It is an award show made by consensus of these specific people. You can see who these people are, right? If you have, I don't know, I guess if you have a problem with it, make your own, right? Do your own. These are my top 10 favorite games of the year. It's that simple. The only thing that the main reason why we pay so much heed to Geoff Keighley is that and his The Game Awards every year is because he pours a lot of money into it, and he has just done it for years now, for decades. He started doing it with Spike, and then when Spike dropped it, Spike TV, the old cable network, I guess, he picked it back up and started pulling all the strings. That's why there's so many ridiculous like ad feeds, right? That's why it feels like an advertisement, because that's how he gets money to do it, right? That's how he gets money to rent out the place, put on performances, have big announcements and all of that, in addition to the award shows, which of course infamously last year, they had the whole wrap it up controversy with Baldur's Gate and all of that, right? But I don't know, he's putting in the work, right? People watch it. There are plenty of other people, like I said, who already do put out these sorts of Game of the Year lists and videos and podcasts and whatnot. And I don't know, like, if we just take a step back and acknowledge maybe the reason why not as many people are watching these is because they don't have the connections that Geoff Keighley has, right? At some point, we have to come down and face facts. Perhaps a lot of us just like watching the new announcements and stuff too. Part of that is a big drawing point, you know? There's no mistaking that, sure, E3 was effectively an enormous advertisement, right? But it got so many eyes on it. Man, who else other than capital G gamers love a good advertisement, right? Who loves to see a cool trailer, a little developer interview? Gosh, we eat it up. We love it, right? There's plenty of other award shows that do the same thing with even more pomp and circumstance. May I point you toward the British BAFTAs, right? They have a whole part of it dedicated to video games, right? There are plenty of BAFTAs handed out for video games. They go all out. They dress up in black tie specifically, I believe, and they pass out awards and all of that. And there is very little, if anything, in the way of what we would generally think of as traditional advertising. Obviously, these are all games. These are all awards going to products you can buy. So in that sense, it is technically an advertisement, even without like traditional advertising, where it's like, go buy this fancy razor or whatever. We were sponsored by this shaving company this year. Go buy their razor or whatever, right? Obviously, that isn't there. As far as I understand, that's not typically there. But also, in addition to stuff like the BAFTAs, I believe GDC does something, Game Developers Conference. D.I.C.E. does something every year. These are award shows that are voted on not by press and like various individuals, right, who either you run like a popular enough podcast or YouTube channel or anything along those lines. They are not the consultants. Instead, it is other game developers that are handing out the awards to others, right? It's just like, oh, we like this game or whatever, right? We are people who literally make games, and we are the ones who now have say in this. This is sort of our own insular thing, right? But there is no denying that a lot of people tune in for the ads, for the hellscape that is the Game Awards. It is sort of a it's a self almost regulating idea. I wouldn't say it's entirely self-regulating, right? But in the sense that, is it a problem that DLC was nominated? Is it a problem that DLC may win, or a remake or a remaster may win? I don't think so, because this is, like I said, it's a big consensus list for Game of the Year. Right? It's just a bunch of people's opinions brought together as one. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Right? It's fine. It's fine if people like the stupid Shadow of the Erd Tree more. I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter that much. It's just there to be like, hey, look at this Shadow of the Erd Tree. What a fun time we're having celebrating this. Right? They don't get like a big stipend of money or whatever, right? It's just a silly fun awards show. It adds, I guess, more pomp and circumstance to the Game Awards themselves. And similarly, you could take a step back even further and sort of levy that criticism here at this video that I have made, right? Because so too, right, as we sort of acknowledged at the beginning, so too is the complaining part of it, right? Just complaining about the state of the Game Awards every year is part of the machine, right? That you are another cog in the great machine that Geoff Keighley has built and wielded against the world, right? So too are you generating takes that ultimately generate viewership for the Game Awards, right? You are part of that machine. I am part of that machine, right? And in a sense, so too, right? Like I said, if we take a step back, the same critique could be levied at myself here and say like, well, the people complain about, they also don't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. They can say whatever they want, but it doesn't change the fact that this is just how the Game Awards work, right? Especially this year. It's just a chance for people to get in and make money and I guess drive up their viewership, right? Whether that be Geoff Keighley himself with his own show, right? Bringing in sponsors, bringing in deals, getting to meet like brush shoulders with other various like auteurs and development studios and all of that. Or people who are, like, for instance, making a YouTube video, right? You sort of draw traffic to your channel because you're dialing in to the current discourse, the current zeitgeist. Right? At the end of the day, it's a Game of the Year list, right? It's like we've talked about on the channel before. It's kind of inherently personal and inherently stupid, right? It's as important as you want it to be. You know, if it's sort of, if you think about it this way, if you don't want it to be important, don't give it your time. You know, if you don't want it to be this big important cultural moment in video games, stop watching it, right? But a lot of people can't help themselves. Geoff Keighley has kind of, right, as much as people bash on Geoff Keighley, he's kind of masterfully made it to where there's a lot of announcements going on there, some big, some small, many small, but every so often there's some that you want to see. People talk about it, you know, people be making videos where they hate it every year. It's all part of the machine, man. You know, it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there's DLC, right? In the running for the Game of the Year. I don't know how else to say it. If it wins, that's just because the rest of the games, people just thought that they were ass, I guess, right? It's like I said, it's more, the reason why people have frustration with it is because it is by consensus and there is no feeling of like, there's nothing you can glean from it, right? There's no information you can glean from a pick that you disagree with or a pick that you do agree with, right? Whereas if you're watching, okay, for instance here, suppose you were a regular viewer of this channel, right? I come out with, these are Lyle Shnub's top 10 games of the year, right? Or anything like that. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you will have some understanding of my taste in games, right? And thus you will enjoy it on that extra level, because this is not by consensus. This is my very specific opinion. I'm very much sort of broadcasting it in that way. Obviously, that is opinion in the Game Awards too, right? But it is done through some amount of consensus. But it's easier to put a face to the opinion and say like, oh, well, obviously Lyle has a penchant for role-playing games. Obviously he probably likes Bethesda games a little too much more than he should, right? Oh, he loves these kind of boring CRPGs. I know he likes them. It makes sense that he would do this. It's kind of endearing that he enjoys them to this degree, even though I know it's not really for me, or it is for me, right? You sort of get that internal dialogue with yourself and sort of, I don't know, whatever it is you're watching, right? Or reading or listening to, you get to have that sort of internal moment. The big disconnect is that, of course, you don't really know the entirety of the team who are being polled for this consensus in the Game Awards, right? Maybe you know a few if you went to go check the page, right? But maybe you don't follow them close enough, Maybe you don't follow every writer at GameSpot. You don't follow the Jeff Gerstmann show, which you should, honestly. You should. I like it a lot. But maybe you have no basis of that, In which case, I would say the onus is not on Geoff Keighley. Perhaps the onus is on, if you follow a bunch of people who are part of like what feels like an institution, your capital G gamer YouTubers. How come they haven't gotten together and made some sort of big video games award show, right? Lord knows there is a lot of money floating around in that space, right? Some of these channels rake in a ton of views, a lot of streams, getting a lot of high concurrence, way more than what I do. At some point, I feel as if you, the viewer, if you agree, like, yeah, I don't like the Game Awards, I don't like the Keighley's and their takes. I want to know the takes of my favorite conglomerate of YouTube podcast people, right? You should say, you all should start an award show too. I prefer your takes, right? That should be the takeaway. The takeaway should be, well, actually, I think your ideas here, I think I have more insight into you as a person and your taste within this space. Ergo, I wish you would make this, right? I wish you would come together and either make a big, YouTube list or come together and pull strings, make connections with other people in the industry, do announcement, bring in eyes and stuff like that, collab with other creators or whatever in some way, and sort of form together a big consensus and have it to where you talk it out, right? There's plenty of other big sites. Like for instance, Giant Bomb would famously do this where they would argue for hours about their Game of the Year lists. And sometimes it got pretty, there was a lot of shit slinging. But at the same time, I kind of loved it. I loved it. I very much enjoyed it. I liked it. I looked forward to it more than Geoff Keighley's whole event, right? Because I knew those people. I followed them very closely. I understood their tastes. I understood their sensibilities, their humors, and all of that. And that got me invested in it, Ergo, if you're invested in some sort of content creator or whatever, or their takes, and if they are of significant size where they have some amount of pull or some amount of resources, capital, or whatever, they should start their own, right? Rather than just taking the easy way and just complaining about every year, I feel, But like I said, it doesn't matter because the complaining is a part of the machine, right? The complaining, it's built for complaining. It's a machine made for complaining. That gets more eyes on it, whether they be in spite, morbid curiosity, or anything significantly more charitable. It's part of the plan, right? It's part of the plot, the process. Your engagement is expected, you know? Anyway, that's sort of my take about it. I just couldn't resist, right? I wanted to get out there too. I wanted to do it as well. Sorry, I'm no better than the rest. I'm a sucker for it. I love the discourse sometimes. Anyway, that ought to do it. Like I said, next week's IRL video will be a little bit out of sorts. It'll be out of chronological order because I just really wanted to talk about this. Like I said, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It doesn't really matter. If enough people are like, yeah, the games this year sucked, but compared to Shadow of the Erd Tree, so be it. I guess Shadow of the Erd Tree just rocks, dude. You know, so be it. They should be allowed to do that. There shouldn't be some rule that says, oh, we're hemming and hawing over expansions and DLC or any of that, right? Like, it should be allowed, you know, because it is such a massive group amount of people, if they want to have a consensus that, yeah, actually this kicked ass, you know, this year, they should be allowed to, you know, they hem and haw. If anything, maybe the only critique I would say is that you don't get to hear it, right? You don't get to hear them hemming and hawing. But of course, you wouldn't really expect that because the Game Awards are sort of modeled over, what's done for television and film, you know, wherein you don't really get to hear the behind the scenes, like arguing behind, you know, whatever the Academy decides upon, right? You don't get to really hear that as a viewer of like the Oscars or the Emmys or something like that. Thus, there's no expectation that you would hear. But hey, that means that there's room for more people to do that if you want that, if it turns out to be popular. But I don't know. Perhaps the Game Awards have shown that maybe that isn't popular. Something to think about. Anyway, that'll do it. I love running my mouth. Until next time, please take care of each other.